Welcome back to Modeling Time with me, Banna. In this video we're going to get the truck's side frames completed, all the way from detailing through to painting. Before I get started on that, this is the point, because we're starting to do some model work, detail work, this is a point where I have to decide, what side frames are going to go on which model, at least for one of them. Doing some research, it comes out that 5 of them, all of the journals are just the Hyatt roller bearing. So I don't have to worry too much about those. Actually, I don't have to worry any about those. All the speed recorders are the same, and they go on the same journal, the front left journal. One of the units that I'm doing, let me see, which one is it? There we go. Unit number 659, which is an XC and EI, it has on the front truck, the front journals are both Hyatt on both sides. The rear journals on the front truck, on the right hand side it's a sloped, on the left hand side it's a box. So that's the only one that I need to basically differentiate with. All of the other ones are the same. Now the other thing that I was kind of debating back and forth with myself, do I want to put sanding hoses on these? And I'm thinking, well, I could do it the old-fashioned way, where we would take a side frame and we would put a piece of solder basically through the clasp, and then wrap it around and put it into a hole in the back of the side frame. That works. That's how we used to do it. The other way I could do it is like I have been doing it for the past few years, and that is to build a nozzle out of brass, drill one end and solder in the nozzle would be made out of 25 thousandths brass wire. Drill one end out and solder in a 12 thousandths pin, and then use Miniatronics ultra flexible wire and bring it off the truck and then onto another pin that's up in the frame, or actually a piece of 25 thousandths brass wire with another pin soldered into it, and then connect it to. That way, if I ever had to take the truck off, I could just pull that Miniatronics ultra flexible wire shielding off and it would work, because you have to strip the wire out of the shielding. And then I'm thinking, with the type of build that I'm doing on these, it really doesn't matter if it has sanding hoses or not. So I went online and looked at a bunch of photographs of other people's models of GP35s, and none of them had sanding hoses on it. At least for the folks that are not really doing prototype modeling. And I'm not doing prototype modeling. I'm doing operational modeling. And some of the really nicely done layouts with some nice locomotives, they had virtually no detailing on it other than, maybe MU hoses, antenna, stuff like that. So, and of course a speed recorder. And on some of their Alco stuff, they had the wheel slip indicators and a speed recorder on the other side. So I'm looking at the big picture here, and I wasn't missing the sanding hoses. It's like, it doesn't take away from the model. It may add to the model, but quite honestly, in an operational environment, you're not looking at that stuff. I've still got the mentality of the RPM modeler, where I'm working on this individual model and I'm seeing all the things that are missing. But when I'm done with the model and I sit back and I put it on a layout or I put it in a consist, those minute little details just don't matter. So I'm going to forego the sanding hoses. I really need to practice some restraint on this model, on these models, and see if I can really do it, because I feel myself like, oh, I got to put this on it, and I got to put that on it. Well, if I put that on, then I got to do that. And if I do that, then I got to do that. And then the whole wall comes tumbling down. So I have to use restraint, and I'm going to use it on these models and on future models. I need to just get these things done and enjoy them for what they are. Now, on the fine scale front, or the RPM front, or whatever you want to call it, just a little bit of a note. All these manufacturers that are putting sanding hoses on their models, completely wrong. The shape of them is not right. They don't just come out nice and rounded and come down to the trucks. They have a route that they take. They're flexible so that they're not in perfect round, flowing form. They've got flowing form so the sand can come down. And the other thing that's wrong with them is they're too small in diameter. Sanding hoses are 2-inch diameter rubber hose. They are, in HO scale, 2 inches rounded to 3 decimal places is 0.023. These sanding hoses that I've seen on models are about the size of what maybe a handrail should be. So they're pretty robust. Now, if you want to put the old-fashioned way, where we used to put, or some people still do, where they drill a hole in the side frame, or in the what do they call this, the slack adjuster, bring it up, wrap it around, and put it in behind the truck frame. 22,000 solder will work really, really well, and looks really, really well. And I think most of my Missouri Pacific models that I did, that's the way I did it. I put solder back behind them. On my EJ&E models, I put the Miniatronics ultra flexible wire in there, and it really, really looks really, really nice stuff. But I just don't want to prolong the building of these models. If I was doing one model at a time, it might be different, because the amount of time it takes to do that stuff is cut down drastically. But doing 6 models at once, it just drags it out. Quite honestly, if I was just doing one model at a time, I'd probably be done with it by now. But I've got other things going on, other modeling projects going on and stuff. So the purpose of this build was simply to do as much of an out-of-the-box model as I can, and try to pull back the reins on this RPM stuff that's still stuck in my head, because I don't think it really matters with the type of modeling I'm doing and the type of activities I'm doing with model railroading, with operations and enjoying running trains with my friends and stuff like that. I'm no longer in the RPM scene, so I've got to be able to look at the model outside of that realm and see it for what it is, build it for what it is, and enjoy it for what it is. I mean, I still want to do some, I keep saying that, I still want to do some modeling, and I do, but I don't want to prolong these projects. I want to just knock them out, just like that. So, the next step in this, or the first step in the side frames, is to get all of the brake cylinders cleaned up, and all of the spring hangers cleaned up. I've got all of that done except for one brake cylinder and one spring hanger, and I'll put that on video so that you can see kind of what I do to clean them up and stuff like that. One of the things that I forgot to do when I was doing the frame is I forgot to paint the bells and install the bells. So I've got them grit blasted and with gray primer paint on them. When I paint the side frames, I'll paint the bells and get those in place. So let me get the camera set up over here, and we'll get the last of the one brake cylinder done and the one spring hanger done. Okay, so I've cleaned up, like I said, all of but one. So I'll cut one of these off, and I'll cut this one off, or this one, doesn't matter. So I'll just go ahead and get this done. So there's one of the last brake cylinder. Yeah, and real quick on some of the models, or actually most of the models that I was looking at to see about if people are doing sanding lines and stuff, and if I would miss it by just looking at the model, and I'd be like, does it stick out like a sore thumb? And I look at them and no, it doesn't. Most of the people are like I said, pretty much all of the photos I looked at, nobody did brake lines They were all just the brake cylinders installed, and that was it. So anyway, let's get this done. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more on this. As far as I can before it goes blurry. Okay, good. All right, so I got to get these done. Now, I'll do the brake cylinder first. I don't know if a lot of you know about this or not, because I see it quite often done where people don't pay attention to installing the brake cylinders. These brake cylinders do have a direction, and KATO made them that way, I think, because there is a mold ejector pin mark on one side of all of these brake cylinders. But you can clock them so that that ejector pin mark is down. And let me see what we got here. So this side, this side has the ejector pin mark on it. So this is the top of the brake cylinder, so the ejector pin mark is down. So just pay attention to that when you're doing this kind of stuff. So I'll just take a set of flat nose pliers, and I'll put this brake cylinder in there with the back end sticking out just a little bit. And the reason I have that done is so that I can get the sandpaper on it, or the sanding stick on it, without hitting the pliers. So there's a parting line that goes around the face of the brake cylinder. So it goes all the way around. So this right here is the center line of the brake cylinder. So there's the top and then the bottom, or the bottom and then the top. So we want, and it's a very faint one, but when you put paint on it, it's there. You can pretty much see it. So everything's going blurry on me. So I'll just take a medium grit sanding stick, and I don't know what grit this is. If you hang on, I can tell you real quick. It's the yellow one. That is 400. So I got a 400 grit sanding stick, and I use these sanding sticks. They're from Ultimate Modeling Products, and they're called Thinny sticks. So that's what I'm using right there. They're really good. I like them a lot. You can cut, as the sanding paper wears down, you can just cut the tips off and you know, until there's no more stick. So anyway, let's get this done. So I'm just going to go in here, get this light out of my way, and I'm just going to, am I still on camera? No. Let me see, I need to be over that. Okay, so I'm just going to go in here, and it's really easy just to knock it off. Like I said, it's not very prominent. And then come up here, and it's really hard to do this on camera. Let me zoom back out a little bit because it's too close. There we go. Now you can see what I'm doing. There we go. And then I can just go around it. Can't see. There we go. Now, it's not really a parting line, but right up on the top, there's a small line, and I don't know what that's from, but I just go up there and knock it down. Now, the hardest place to get is where the brake cylinder drops down to the piston. So I just try to, that's the one thing I like about these Thinny sticks, is they have, one side has like a flared out edge, and the other side is kind of straight up and down edge. So the flared out edge I can get into the tight places and knock down this there. That pretty much takes it. I just do a quick visual on it to see if there's anything really glaring that sticks out. And that's it. So that takes care of the brake cylinder. Now, you've got a parting line. The reason I didn't talk about this in the parting lines yet is because you've got a parting line that runs all the way around the outside center line of this part. You don't want to remove that because the prototype has that on it. So that's a good thing. So you don't have to remove the parting line that's along the outside. The parting line you do want to remove is these circular ends, these pins on the ends. Just go across them real little bit with the sanding stick, knock that one off, knock that one off, and then this pipe or this rod that goes in between, that's where I can use the thin side of the thinny stick and just hit that parting line on the top and bottom. And when you're doing it, just rotate around the rod with the stick so you don't flatten it. And then the only other place you want to sand is where you cut it off the tree. Just do a quick one right over that, and that's it. So that's basically it. Surprisingly, it only took me 2 days to do all of these, and not, you know, if you sit there with a session, there they all are right there. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's 6 locomotives right there. So now what I can do is I can get these all glued on to the side frames. I got to drill them out because I am going to put the airlines on them. But I can drill them out while they're glued on to the side frames. So I got all these side frames I need to do, and I don't think I need to show you how to put brake cylinders on and spring hangers on. It's quite obvious. The only thing you need to know, again, is that mold pin mark on it. I try to think of things and I can't think of them, of what they're called. But anyway, that goes down. And ejector pin mark, that goes down. And the brake cylinders go into these rectangular holes, and the spring hangers go into these round holes. I'll glue them in from behind. Once that's set, I'll pin prick the center of the brake cylinder and drill it out with a 15 thousandths drill bit. The reason why I'm using a 15 thousandths is because the wire is like 12.5 thousandths. The reason why I'm using a 15 thousandths is when I hit it with CA, it'll capillary action into the hole and fill in around it so it has something to hold to. Now I'll be using the brake lines from Atlas. I bought a whole mess of them a long time ago and I still have them all, so I said, well, I might as well start using them. And drilling these things out is not that big of a deal. The brake cylinders are actually hollow on the inside, so when you start drilling, all of a sudden the drill bit will release and go in really fast, and you've hit that hollow spot. So there's like a cavity on the inside. So anyway, let me get these glued on. I'll get the airlines on, and before I finish, the last one will be that oddball 659, where I need to put a sloped and a box on, and then I'll go in and we'll put on video cutting the appropriate journal off so I can put the appropriate journal box and slope box on. So that pretty much takes care of that. Now real quick, one of the things I wanted to touch on also with building these models, and this isn't any philosophical thing or anything like that. So I'm doing 6 units. I showed in the beginning of this video, not this video, but the whole series of videos, the picture that inspired me to build these models. Now in that picture, there's 6 GP35s. The first one is TNP 605. The second one is Missouri Pacific 626. Then you got CNEI or ex-CNEI 658 or 650, TNP 645, and then the last 2 you can't see the road numbers on. So I had to do a little bit of research to find out which CNEI, the last 2 are CNEI, but you couldn't see the road numbers. So I had to figure out, with a little bit of research, which CNEI locomotives were painted Jinx blue around the end of 1960s, like 69, because this photo I think was 68 or 69. I can't remember which date. I think it was 69, not sure. But unfortunately, I couldn't find anything except for two. One was 1969, and one was 1970. So the 1970 one I figured was close enough to 1969 that it was painted at that time so that I could use it. So I'll be, the ones that I'm throwing in there that I had to pick from is unit number 659, which is a phase 1B3, and unit number 665, which was taken in, I'm sorry, 665 was 1969, 659 was 1970. So I just had to pick two. All the other pictures that I could find of approximately around that era, they were still in CNEI black and white with the buzzsaw on the cab, or CNEI buzzsaw on the cab. So the last two units would be 659 and 665, both of them phase 1B3s. Now when I get to the hoods, I'll go over the different phases and the phase differences and things like that. So anyway, I just wanted to touch on that and give you an idea of why I chose 659 and 665 as the last two units. So let me go ahead and get these side frames all taken care of with installing the brake cylinders, drilling out the ends. Drilling out the ends is no big deal, just prick the ends in the center, drill them, and then you insert the wire. So anyways, I'll come right back when it's time to cut the journals off the one oddball side frame. Alright, so I'm at the mill and I've got the side frame. I've done all the other side frames. There's actually 4 of these. They're the same on the 4, where the right side is a box and the left side is a slope. It's just on one of them it's on the front truck rear axle, and on the other one it's on the rear truck rear axle. So I had to cut 4 of them, and I marked the journal that needs to be cut with a marker so I know I don't make a mistake and cut the wrong side. So when I put this in the vise, I can't just put it in like this, because when I push it down it flexes in the middle because it has these little details that stick up on the ends. Now I could just probably cut those off. They really, I don't know why they're there. Nothing locks into them, and there's plenty of thickness in the side frame, but I could just cut those off and it'd be level all the way across from the back of this brake caliper across here and the back of this brake caliper. But I'm just going to leave it on. So they're 20 thousandths. So what I do is I got this 20 thousandths piece of styrene, and I will lock it in. Sorry if you can't see everything, I just gotta get that in there. So I lock it in like that, and then I will turn this over. And there we go. So now it's straight all the way across, and I can tighten the vise down on, hold it down really tight, and just cinch the vise up a little bit and hold it in place. Now this caliper flexes just a little bit, but it flexes enough that it would cause this end to be high or low, and this end to be high, and this end over here to be low. Let me see if I can point to that better. Whoops, sorry for moving the camera. Let me get that back in there. So it would cause this side to be high and this side to be low. So what I'll do is I'll get most of the meat cut off, and then when I come in at the end, I'll take my finger and actually not my finger. I thought I was ready for all this. I'll take some tweezers put them right over the caliper and hold that down and while I'm cutting. It's difficult when I have to do this side because I have to do all my wheel rotations with my left hand because I'm holding with my right hand. But this side's easier because I can do everything with my left hand and switch from dial to dial to move it in and out. So let's go ahead and get the bulk of this cut down. Make sure that it's on camera. Oh, the column's hitting. There we go. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to lock the column and then use the dial, the fine dial, to move it down. Make sure that it's cinched up good. Yep. Okay, now I'm going to make the final cut and I'll hold that down. And that takes care of cutting off the journal. So now I can put a sloped or a box journal on it. Now there's a little bit left on there that I need to trim off. I had to avoid making contact with these bolt heads on either side of the slider pads. I did cut the sliders off because the detail I'm using has sliders on it. So now this whole surface is even with the sliders, and I did not cut into the spring pack. So I'll take this off, we'll go set the camera up over on the other bench, and I'll talk about the journals that are going on there and which ones I chose to use. Alright, so that's what it looks like once it's milled off. And I used a brand new number 11 blade to clean up any areas that needed cleanup. So it's nice and flat surface to be glued onto and stuff. What I need to do now is go grit blast these journal faces and grit blast the journal boxes so that I can glue them on really nicely. What I wanted to show you, there was something I wanted to show you, but I'm going to, oh yeah, I wanted to talk about the journals I chose to use, or what brand. You have three choices. You can use the Detail Associates, which are very difficult to find. I was fortunate enough to find a whole bunch of them, so I have enough to do a few models. You can use the Details West, which are the white metal. They're not bad, they just have a parting line you have to clean up across the front of them. They look nice, they have some nice detail on them. Or you can use the Athearn journal. They have all the different journals. They have the Hyatt, they have the box, they have the slope, they have the box with the hole in it for the speed recorder, and they have the Hyatt with the ATS shoe on it. So I've bought plenty of those, so I have enough. Now the Athearn ones come with these pins on the back because on their journals or on their side frames they have little locating holes that any of these journal boxes can go into. So I have to cut that off. So I'll just go in here and slice it off, make sure there's no high spots. Let me zoom out a little bit. There we go. So right now I'm just cleaning off any high spots that might have been left, and then I'll go and grit blast these. Something I want to show you, I'm not going to show you how I glue everything on, but something I want to show with these spring hangers. Now I need to zoom in on this again. First, before I zoom in on it, these don't need to be glued on. They fit pretty tight in there. I'm going to pull it out after I show you this. So you push it in there. Now, this one went on straight. I'm going to do something real quick here. Okay. Sometimes, not sometimes, but many times, let me zoom in on this. Okay, I think you can see that. Do you see how this bar kind of has a curvature to it? That's because sometimes when you push these on, these where the pins are rotating a little bit. It's really easy to fix that. All you do is you take your tweezers and you just rotate them back out. And you just rotate them whichever way it needs to be to make this bar go straight. And do that. So that's just a little tip to keep an eye on. A lot of people just push these on thinking that they'll go on straight, and sometimes they don't. So you want to keep an eye on that. So I am going to go grit blast this surface area on all these journals, and then I'm going to glue these journals on. There's no big deal about gluing the journals on. I'll just put glue on one side, make sure it's lined up properly, and stick that journal right in there. So let me go get that taken care of. Alright, moving right along, I've got the side frames built. They've got the brake lines on them, the brake cylinders on them. This is one that has, let me zoom in on this a little bit. There we go. This one has the square journal box. This one has the slope journal box, and they've been grit blasted, and they've been in primer gray. Now the gray that I use is Tamiya Royal Light Gray. It's a flat base paint. So I've got all of the trucks done this way, so they're ready to have some Jenks blue put on them. The next step is to solder the wires to the copper pickup strips, and I've got that all done. There's nothing really to show about soldering. I just clip them on, and then run some solder on them. So these are now have a nice solid connection, so I have good signal transfer from the pickup strip to the wires. After I do the soldering, they're kind of gummy from the flux. So what I do, I need to dump this out. I put some alcohol in a little dish, and I just put all of the pickup strips into the alcohol, let it soak for a couple minutes, and then just use a stiff brush and just scrub it and get all of the flux off of them. Because I need to grit blast these in order to paint them. I don't want to paint on this shiny surface. It won't stick as well. So I've cleaned them all up because the grit won't take out that gooey flux. It'll just stick to it. So let me zoom out a little bit. And to prep these things for grit blasting, I use pipe cleaners, and this helps to clean the holes out, or the pickup holes, because I don't want to grit blast the bearing surface for the wheels or the axle tips. So what I'll do is I'll just stick that in there and just cut off the end. There. Now I can, and I'll do that to the other side too. And now I can grit blast all of that and not grit blast the bearing surface. So I'm going to go ahead and get this all done. I'll get them grit blasted, and then I'll put them in primer gray. Now before I get paint on these, here's a quick look at the copper pickup strips after they've been grit blasted. I've also grit blasted the wire shielding a bit so that the paint will stick nicely to it. Because when you're looking at the trucks and stuff, you really don't see in behind there that much, but if there's any contrasting colors, they will kind of draw your eye to it. So I'll be painting the wires, maybe about halfway up with primer and blue. So I'm going to go ahead and get the primer gray on these, and then it'll be time to get the side frames in blue and these in blue. So I'll see you when that's all done. Okay, well, I've got here a sea of Jenks blue. The side frames have all been painted with True Color paint, Jenks blue. The pickup strips have all been painted with same paint, and like I said before, I had forgotten to do the bells, so I've got the bells all painted. After I painted everything, then I shot them with a clear gloss. My favorite clear gloss, I think I've mentioned it before, is All Clad Aqua Gloss. It has really good properties to it. It dries fairly quickly, and when it's cured, it has a rock hard finish to it. So the paint is very well protected. After that had dried, then I shot everything in a satin varnish to take the high gloss off. So now all this matches the color of the frame and the frames and the gear towers. So my next, real quick, believe it or not, all of this took one full bottle of True Color paint, Jenks Blue. Apparently I like True Color paint. It's a great paint now that I know how to shoot it, but it doesn't go very far. But that's okay. I think I need to get another bottle or two when I do the shells and the cab and sub base and all that stuff, because it's going to take quite a bit of paint. But okay, that's okay. I like the color. It goes on very evenly, and it looks great when it's done. But as you can see, I've got the pickup strips painted. I've got the wires painted blue. So when I put all this together, everything's going to look uniform. So my next step here is to assemble the gear towers, put the side frames on, put the pickup strips in, the side frames on, the wheels in, and all that, get the gears in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that to all but one set of trucks, or one truck. And then I'll show you how I lube all the gears, you know, what I go through to put these all back together. So let me get the all 6 sets done except for the one truck, and then I'll come back and we'll put that one truck together. Okay folks, I am on the last assembly of the side frames, putting the gears in and pickup strips. Whoops, in the wrong, I gotta move them out for me. Okay, so I got the side frames, the gear towers, the pickup strips, and the gears. So I gotta put all of this together, but first I need to lubricate it all. So I've done all of the other assemblies, so this is the last one. So I'll show you how I do all of that and the methodology I go through to get these models running super quiet and super smooth. And a lot of it starts right here with the gears. Now, for those of you who are in N scale, I know there's at least one, you can do the same thing to your N scale gears. So let me put these aside. So the first thing I want to do is take off the bottom clip. Now if I do this a little slowly, it's because I'm looking at the screen to make sure I'm on camera here. I know that this is this one's the middle of the screen, and I work up a little bit higher than that, so if I work where these green marks are, I'm approximately middle of the screen. No, over here. It's hard, guys, believe me. Alright, next task is to unscrew the 2 halves. Now, these screws are Japanese Phillips heads, which means a US Phillips heads, they have a steeper angle. So they will bottom out in the screw before the top of the teeth make contact with the Phillips head port, or the triangular port, or the cross portion. So what you want to do so that it doesn't slip out is you want to push on it and then unscrew it. I need to get myself a set of Japanese Phillips heads. They will fit snug into these these Japanese, or these KATO screws. There we go. Okay, now the next step is just to go in here and brush out any residue that may have been left behind from grit blasting. Even though I washed them out, there's really nothing in here, but I just want to make sure. Get that out. Let's look at this side. There's a few crumbs in there. Okay, that's clean. And you also want to clean your screws. These are self-tapping screws, and sometimes there's a little plastic still stuck into the threads and into the self-tapping portion, and you don't want to put that back in there because that could cause the screw to strip the threads or something like that. So just brush them out, and that's that. And then clean the bottom clip. Okay. So now I use this for lubrication, Label 106 lubricating grease with Teflon. And I get myself a little tray and I put it right in there. I'm probably going to need just a dab more, so I'll go ahead and add just a small amount more. There we go. That should be all I need. That's probably more than what I'll use, but actually no, because when we get to the worm gears, use a little bit more in the worm gears. Okay, so I get myself a dedicated brush that I use for grease. Let me wipe it off. Start over again with it. And I'm going to start by adding a little bit of grease to all the bearing surfaces, all these bearing surfaces and the axle holes. Now, you don't want to add too much grease. You just want to coat the area, and you don't want heavy deposits. I call it grease or oil sweat. If you have a large deposit of grease, over time it'll sweat out the oil, and then that is the oil that will migrate to the outsides and make the surface of your models look greasy and oily wet. So I suggest not using a big glob of grease. That's why I'm going to show you the way that I do this. And believe me, these things roll smooth. I mean, so damn smooth. So what I'm doing is I'm going to get some grease on the, see if you can see, yeah, get some grease. Let me move this stuff out of the way. Get it out of the way. So there we go. Get a little bit of grease on the brush, and I'm just going to go in and brush the surfaces and the axle hole. I use grease because grease tends to stay where you put it and it doesn't migrate. I used to use that heavy Labelle oil, but it still migrates. And I used to not lubricate my stuff like this. I used to just put just a tiny bit of oil on the gears and thought that was okay. But one day I was having problems with my RS11 running, and it was making a bit of noise. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to go lubricate everything, all bearing surface, everything that moves, everything that rolls on on something, you know, all the surfaces. And that just completely quieted everything down. There was also a little bit of user error, but still the greasing made a huge difference in the operational characteristics of the model. I used to think that, oh, it's Delrin, it's slippery plastic, it'll be fine, and not even oil anything or lubricate anything. But this actually, I'm not saying what I'm doing is the, you know, written in stone, the best thing to do and all that kind of stuff, but it does work for me, and everything rolls super nice. So that takes care of those bearing surfaces. Now we're going to go to the gears. Now before you start lubricating your gears, I'm going to show you something here, and you'll see this little tip right there. You want to cut that off, and there's not one on the other side. Now if you do not have a little tip on the end of your axle, on the other side there's push pin marks. You will have a piece of flash on those push pin marks. So just inspect your gears and remove anything you don't need, that doesn't need to be there. Now I'm going to oil or grease each cog. So get some grease on the brush, and we're just going to go in here and brush each cog. Now in N scale this will be a little bit more difficult because the gears are much smaller. This is harder to do right now because I'm on camera. Usually I'd be up here and you wouldn't see anything, but since I have to keep it on camera, it's hard to hold it in a position that I can get it to, or get at it. Let me rotate that so I can get the cogs that are under the tweezers. There we go. We got the cogs all greased. Now we're going to go and get the axles greased. There we go. And now we're just going to lay it into the gear tower. And we'll go get, oh no, now there's 3 black gears. On all of these, there's going to be a little tiny tip on one side of the axles. So we're going to go cut that off, and we'll do that for each of them. There we go. So that's going to be done for each of them. Now, I don't need to show you the greasing of these because it's the exact same process of the greasing of the white gear. So I don't think you need to just sit there and watch me do 3 gears. So on the black gears, you cut off the tip, inspect the cogs, make sure there's no chipped ones or any flash or anything like that, and then we'll grease them. So I'm going to turn the camera off, and then when I'm all done with these, they'll be in here, and I'll show you that and what I do next. All right, so here we have all the gears in place. They've been greased, and it's ready to close up the gear tower. So remember, we already greased the bearing surfaces on this side, so we're just going to go ahead and set that in there. We're going to put the screws back in. Okay, now before we put anything else in there, I am also going to lightly grease these axle ports. I mean, it's just enough to make it shiny. There we go. Now it's time to put the wheels in. So, remember earlier in this video, I talked about, or when I was doing the wheel cleaning and painting and all that, I talked about having cracked axles. Well, again, I didn't want to buy just wheeled axle sets from KATO. They're expensive. And so I showed you that I used that Loctite bearing glue or adhesive or whatever, and it worked beautifully. The ones, none of these are cracked, but they're all in the other ones, and they don't budge at all. The only point I want to make about it is if you're going to do that you're going to make sure they're engaged. You've gauged them because they're solidly implanted into these the axles and the axle gear. They are solid now. You're not going to be able to pull them out without breaking it loose. So everything works great. The axles are solid again, and there will be no slippage in them. So now I'm going to inspect my axle gears, and I'm going to go ahead and start greasing them up. So I'm just going to come in here and just paint the grease right into the cogs, into the gears. Keep calling them cogs. I'll just call them gears. Well, the whole thing's a gear. So I guess each one of these little indents and our mountains and valleys are cogs. So there's that one. So I can go set that one right in there. And now we'll do the next one. Make sure that they're cleaned up. There's nothing protruding. I've got This is the only one I've had that. Right here, there's a little piece of sprue. There we go. Okay. So now I'll go and paint the cogs. I hope you can see that, because the camera's at an angle. That means I have to turn these things at an odd angle. Oh, this one does have a cracked axle. So it's like I said, it's really, really solid. I can put a little bit of tension on it, it ain't gonna break loose. So that's what I want, is for them to be, I don't want them slipping. I don't want the gears slipping on the axles. So this is a side that's cracked right in there. I don't think you can see it, but it's really good. There's a lot of good tension on it. And that takes care of the wheels. Now let me flip this over and do the push test. You can see the gears spinning in there, and everything's working good. Okay, now it's time to put the side frames on. So these all have Hyatt roller bearings, so it doesn't make a difference which side they go on. But before, what happens is this pin, where's my pointer? There we go. This pin, let me move this stuff back. There we go. This pin goes into the hole right here. Well, there's paint on it, so it doesn't allow this side frame to slip on well. So I just take a knife and I scrape the paint off. So let me go ahead and get that taken care of on both of the side frames, and we'll finish this up. Alright, so I've got the pins. You can see they're scraped off of paint. That one and that one. So now I can put the pickup strips into them. So now, the pickup strips, remember early on in this video session that I had told, I think it was at the beginning when I was taking the trucks apart, I had told you to mark the front of the pickup strip, because when you solder this wire on, you want to solder it forward. So that's what they all are. So the portion of the pickup strip that bulges out or pushes out actually goes into the side frame. So that's the outside, and the flat side is the inside. So we'll just go ahead and put that on there, like that. Now what I do is I use, let me see if I'm going to take this stuff off of here. I have it wrapped up in paper towel because it kind of oozes a little bit. The oil oozes out. But this stuff is a conductive grease. Let me wrap that back up. I mean, it's not oozing oil out anywhere really, but it's from the cap. It was doing that early on, so I just go ahead and I keep it wrapped in paper towel like that. I've put a little bit on a paper towel so it soaks out the heavy oils, and I'll take a toothpick and I'll dab a little bit in the conductive grease, and I'll put it inside the bearing strip. Now it's just a tiny bit in there. And now we'll just slip that over the truck, or the gear tower. Get the wheels in there. And we make sure it still rolls without any problem. So the gears are turning and the wheels are turning. Alright, then we're going to do the same thing to the other side. Make sure the wire is forward. Get the pickup strip in there. Put a little bit of conductive grease on there. A little too much on there. And stick this onto the gear tower. Make sure the axles get into the pickup strip. And there we go. Now we do the push test again. Make sure everything's moving. There's no binding or anything. Now pick it up and we'll put the clip on. You want it to snap firmly around all of the clip holders. There we go. And once again, we'll do the push test. That takes care of that. Now it's time to wrap the wires around these hooks. Right in on either side of the side frame, there are little hooks for the wires. Now you're going to chip off a little teeny tiny bit of paint, but that's okay, you're not going to see it. So let me move some of this stuff out of the way. All the greasing is done. Oh no, it's not done. I keep thinking it's done, but it's not. I still have to put the bells in the frame. I forgot to put the bells in the frame. They're all done too. So now, this is going to be hard to show on camera, but I'll try. I'm going to take this wire, maybe it's better on this side. I'm going to take this wire, grab it about at the beginning of the brake cylinder, and I'm going to bend it down and go underneath that clip. If you can see that right in there, it's underneath the clip. Then I'm going to wrap it around, not tight, don't pull it tight. I take a little tiny screwdriver and I go from the bottom and press it in as I rotate the screwdriver up. And like I said, this is really tight. And there it's into the clip. There you can see it's into the clip. Then I just take a brush and brush away any residue from the paint that might have come off, and that's how it's done. So I'll go ahead and get this side done real quick, and we'll move on to the next step. I said real quick, come on. There we go. A little bit of paint chipped off. Just wipe that down. I can always go in there and touch that up, but that's that. Okay, now the next thing that I lubricate, let me get some grease on here, is the bolster pin pad. Just a little bit. And these little bumps that the frame rides on. Just like that. This is the rear truck, so now we got the frame and everything. We're going to put these wires through here. And drop the frame on. Now everything's rolling beautifully. Alright, now it's time to get the worm gears in. So let me get the worm gears out. I don't put the drive shafts in until I put the motor in. So, let's get the worm gears out. 1, 2, and I need the thrust washers. can't get this thrust washer out. Get out of my way. There we go. Okay, so the drive shafts will stay in this bag until I'm ready to put them in. Alright, now I do need some more grease. Okay, let me turn these upside down. Now, it paid off to clean everything. Alright, so now for the worm gears, get some grease on the brush, and I'm going to pull this bushing back and get right in between the worm gear and the bushing. I'm going to push the bushing back, a little bit more grease, and get on the outside of the bushing. Rotate it out, spin it, and it's good to go. Next, I'll do the worm gear itself. So I'm just going to paint the grease on the worm gear. Make sure all surfaces are covered. And then I'll paint the end. Take that, put a bushing on the end, pull the frame over here, and that's done. Now we'll do the other side, do the same thing. Get some grease on there between the bushing and the worm gear. Now what I'm doing is I'm lubricating the shaft so that the bushing rotates real smoothly on it. Okay, now we'll get it on the worm gear. Now it looks like I'm putting a whole lot of grease on there, but remember, you're spreading it over the entire worm gear. You're brushing it on, covering all surfaces of the worm gear. But you'll notice it's not clumping anywhere. It's spreading out and it's a nice thin coating. So I'm not going to get that oil sweat. There's that. We got the other end of the bushing on there. Pull the frame back over here. And there we go. Now we just need to put the worm gear covers on. Now I know what you're saying. You say, come on, you didn't paint those. Yeah, I know, but that's okay. You don't see them at all. Make sure you get a good snap. Now the wheels aren't going to rotate because, of course, the worm gear's in there. And that takes care of the trucks. So, we're done with 6 frames and truck sets. Well, that takes care of this video. I've got all of the trucks installed on the frame, so I've got everything painted, the frame painted, gear towers, trucks, side frames, the bell, all installed. I've got, what else do I got? I got the gears all lubed up. Everything's running, or rolling at least, very, very smoothly. So let me pull this back here and see if I can give you a little bit of a look-see of what we got going here. Let me move this around here. All right, so we got, first unit is TNP number 605. Second one is Missouri Pacific number 626. Third one is CNEI number 650. Fourth one is TNP 645, and the fifth one is CNEI 659, and the last one, number 6, is CNEI 665. So, let me get this rolled back around here. Alright, so it's time to move on to the next video. With this all done, the next session is going to be installing the motor, drive shafts, and getting the DCC and sound all set up. I don't need to do the lights yet. That'll get done once I get the shells done. But for right now, after or starting with the next video session, I'll be getting everything done to it so that these will be operational. So I'll just show you something real quick that I'm tinkering with. I don't know if it's ever going to happen or not, but a long time ago a friend of mine sent me this when I was looking at modeling my Carroll Port Terminal in Chicago, and this is where the Missouri Pacific crosses the old CNEI, and oh no, I'm sorry, not the CNEI. So this is the Missouri Pacific. No, wait, yeah, this is the Missouri, sorry, I'm looking at it from behind. So this is the Missouri Pacific. This is the town of Karnak, down here, Karnak, Illinois. And this is the old Big Four New York Central in here. So this going this way would be Harrisburg, Illinois, where New York Central, which is my Carroll Port Terminal in Chicago, would have a rather good sized hump yard, and they would marshal or store coal hoppers in there, and they would bring them down and interchange with the Missouri Pacific. And going this way, I think it's this way, let me look real quick. So that's where it's, yeah. Going this way is Joppa, Illinois, where they had the Joppa power plant, and also there's a large cement facility down there. So the New York Central will bring coal hoppers into here so that they could go down to Joppa. So I'm thinking about modeling that pretty much to scale, because I'll be doing it in modules. I don't know if it's ever going to happen. Maybe, maybe not. But each one of these is an 8-foot module. So from here, off the paper here, is 5 8-foot modules. So that's 40 feet. So that's an 8-foot module, and that's an 8-foot module. So that would be this intersection here. I still have to figure out how I'm going to do the interchange tracks and stuff, but I need to figure out. Right now this is 18 inches wide. I don't know if it needs to be a little wider, because I need a through line, and then I need a 4-track yard in here, which would be all up in here. So I'm tinkering with that. I don't know if it's going to happen. It might happen, but we'll see. I'll keep you up to date on that. So anyway, it's time to move on to the next video, or the next video session. So I'm going to end this video here, and if you made it all the way to the end here, again, I really do appreciate your time, and I hope you got something out of this and found it interesting, and maybe there's some things you can use and stuff like that. So again, thank you very much, and I'll catch you in the next video.